So my name is Martin Kamprath. I'm from the German Parliament, the Deutscher Bundestag, as it's called in Germany. And my task here, just to give you an idea about my role, is I'm originated in the research service division, but I also have the role of an AI coordinator in the Bundestag to introduce or to prepare the introduction of AI technologies. We started, I would say, at the beginning of 2023. And I just want to give you some insights how we try to make sense and explain what AI technologies means and how you can access and understand the stepping from technology to use cases to culture. And this is what my talk is about. I will just give you a short introduction why I'm talking about this. So this is just a small historical view about our AI activities in the Bundestag that started in early February. And maybe the interesting part here is that it doesn't start by kind of a strategic approach in the first step, but rather more modeling through and a cumulative accelerating of the emergence of the topic itself. So as you might all know that February 23, there was this big starting of ChatGPT, so a few months earlier, and we started on two different organizational levels to think about what AI might have as an impact on the German Bundestag. We started directly in our division because in the research services, we saw that the ability of these large language model of ChatGPT had capabilities that were quite similar to our work. So we thought, okay, we need to understand this technology. And at the same time, there was a call for innovation projects or at the level of the Secretary General. And he announced a program where he called for ideas in lighthouse projects, and these projects should run outside the normal hierarchy. And here there was the idea from another division to implement an AI project, so directly build an application. And during the first months in 2023, we come to the conclusion that it makes sense just to build a joint group and to facilitate all our activities in these Lighthouse project. And we said, okay, this is a Lighthouse project about AI from two perspectives. One is really building an AI app. So it was more about automated indexing of publications from the division of press in our parliament. And then we had the second project that should focus more on the user-centric and organizational perspective of the use of AI. So more the strategic aspect about different use cases, risks, benefits, what it means for the culture, what it means for community. So more the soft side or more the strategic side. And from that, we said, okay, we need to help us to understand these fast-changing AI environment. And we came up with the conclusion to build little working packages and to build tools that we make sense of all the information that are coming through and we need to understand. We had the idea to develop these 4 tools. The last one is still in development. The first one was an idea sourcing radar, which should answer the question where to search for AI use cases. The second was to build an AI use case map that should answer the question where to implement AI technology. And the third one was to how to design AI applications. So really going more into a more broader view and more individualistic, individual perspective to build a kind of a use case canvas to be more creative in the application of direct tools. The last one is the AI assessment matrix, but I will not focus on that. So in this talk, I will focus on the first two, but mainly on the second, so the AI use case map. But before, when we tried to build the AI use case map, we really thought, okay, what is a use case in that sense? So we tried to understand first the idea and the use and how you come from technology to use cases. And I will talk about these thoughts and, let's say, to model the idea, how to approach technology to application. So basically, when we came up with the idea to build a use case map, we thought, okay, this might be big because there are so many activities in Parliament that could maybe be affected by AI. Where to start? And we thought, we were looking around and watching in 2023 all the all the different activities and the analysis and all the papers that came out about AI and how people use it and what they make as an experience of that. So the best practice and the worst practice. And we had difficulties to understand because the perspective on what is actually a use case was always changing. And we thought, okay, we need for us to understand this and to find the right unit of analyzers. And we came through this step approach that was published in the Harvard Business Review. It's just a small article, but I would really recommend to read this, because here we found, I think, the most value unit of analyzers when you talk about AI and AI activities in terms of use cases. So it basically says that an organization has hierarchies and processes. And in the organization, you have the individuals. And the individuals have the jobs, and these jobs consist of activities and sometimes, if you break it more down, in tasks. Here, this is an illustration that should illustrate that. So we have a big process, and that process is divided by activities, which is then again divided by tasks. And AI applications support, enhance, or replace these activities mentioned here, and they can fulfill certain tasks to do that. And there are three different kinds of tasks or activities. One is that AI cannot or should not automate these or augment these. So this will be, or these are activities that will always be performed by a human. Then we have activities which could be augmented by AI for the worker's action. And the third one is that you really can automate AI with AI these activities. So these are this is the idea that if we talk about AI use cases, we need to understand certain levels, and these are roughly the categories you need to understand when you say, okay, we want to have use cases. The first one is we talk about AI technologies. So these are the various technologies from machine learning to different other aspects. I will come to that a bit later. So this is the green box. And these technologies can perform certain or have capabilities, because you can combine different AI technologies and then you have a new capability. And then we have the organization aspect, that is the blue box here. So where processes are together and are a certain sequence of different tasks. And here we, where the melting between the technology view and the organizational views, there are the AI use cases. Just to be in the color coding, I'm sorry. Just to be in the color coding. So here are some examples. Sorry, my voice. I hope you can cover it up. Okay, so here we have the AI technologies I mentioned before. These are for example, computer vision in terms of image or video creating. We have natural language processing, speech recognition. We have learning technology, reasoning, robotics. So this is all about AI technologies. And these technologies lead to capabilities if you combine, for example, different technologies. You can have capabilities in terms of analyzers, in terms of an interface. You can have these text-to-speech, text-to-sound, so everything what we call the generative AI. And we also have these robotics. So this is mainly based, this categorization, on the AI definition of the EU. And these are, let's say, the potential of technologies. And then you come with the organizational aspect. So the organization has different kinds of processes. So there are different categories for processes in public administration. That is, for example, analyzers. So processes where we need to analyze things. We have processes about decisions, enforcement, internal administrations, or services and participation. And this we now break down to the core activities of the parliament. And these are very broad categories for activities in a parliament. These are the three overlapping circles in the middle. So we have the legislative work, of course, that is the core, the USP of a parliament in that sense. We have knowledge, that is embrace services, so services that enables good legislative work. For example, the research services is an example, or everything about library. And then we have the third part, that is internal management, and that is everything that supports the other two circles. So this is mainly the IT department. This is HR. So this is purchasing. So all the internal management to run the work of a parliament. And now we meld these four different categories together, and we came up with this model here, where in the middle we place the AI use cases that are a result of the capabilities of the AI technologies and different processes in these three categories of a parliament. And yeah, finally, we use that kind of model. This is a screenshot from our AI use case map. Basically, in the middle, you see mind maps, and all these mind maps represent certain departments or related activities in these departments. And then they break down how the different AI capabilities enable new activities. For example, summarizing text and all that capabilities we know now from generative AI. And this is now breaking down more into all the different activities of a parliament. In total, we have over 180 use cases identified. It's not the end. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper, but we stop at the 180 because we already found that we already identified the most, let's say, striking or low-hanging fruits, and are now evaluating different use cases. And I don't want to cut here, because one is the possibilities of AI technologies implemented in a parliament. The other thing is the final introduction. So how do you get everyone on board in that sense to use the potentials that are offered by AI technologies? And I will just give a small insight what we are now thinking about and what we are looking also into other parliaments. So if you think about modernization of parliaments, that is a challenge not only from a technology perspective, but rather also from strategy. So the directed agenda and how it is addressed to also include the cultural change that needs to be done, that needs to be understood to really make the introduction of AI technologies a success. And now there are already different approaches in place that should guide also parliaments how to implement AI in their organizations. These are the three screenshots here on the left. They are all very smart approaches, but from our perspective and from our experience, he's saying of Peter Drucker, that is a very famous management guru, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So that's really, really true. So if you just do it top down or even bottom up, but have no approach to really drive people, then you cannot catch the full potential. But to be honest, we see that also when we are talking about these cultural aspects on AI with other parliaments, there seems to be no silver bullet in terms of that there's a single part that works for everyone. Rather, it seems to me that it's a question of where a parliament from its digitalization degree is starting. So how mature is the parliament already for that? This is just a small, or maybe a bit confusing in the first step, overview of all the initiatives and tools and resources we found, which play a certain role on the introduction of AI. So this is from AI toolbox to knowledge, to networks, to technology, to execution, to governance. But it's not everything here on the slide, but this already shows how complex it is to introduce AI and how important it is to take everyone's also perceived risk feelings and maybe also fears of an introduction of AI into account. Okay, that is my presentation so far. I hope that was interesting for you. If you have any question, you can contact me directly by email. I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi Martin. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive overview in terms of where you're at, and obviously some of the thought processes that you've actually had around AI specifically. I'm actually really curious about the 180 use cases. So, and since 2023, that's obviously a very significant amount. And I'd be sort of interested to get your sort of thoughts in terms of, out of those 180 potential use cases that you've actually identified, and you were saying some of the potentially low-hanging fruit as well. You know, since 2023 to obviously now 2025, you know, how far progressed are you with some of those sort of use cases? Because it sounds like, you know, when you deal with like 180 use cases, I was saying, well, oh, is that a, you know, 10-year journey, or is it a 3-year journey? It is a 1-year journey, as an example. Like, obviously, how long is a piece of string sometimes? So I'm curious to get your thoughts in terms of what your, you know, progress is on those use cases, and what you would consider would be low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe this sounds very overwhelming. 180 use cases. I mean, what the aim was is, what does it mean for all the different departments if you have, for example, a certain capability? So it's not about just a general capability, summarize text. Okay, that means for different departments, very different activities, because they are summarizing very different texts. And the idea was of these 180 use cases to really break down to certain activities of individuals. And the German Bundestag has roughly about 3,500 persons, employees, so just in the administration. That means we thought it doesn't make sense to talk about AI and what AI can do you in a very abstract, high-level manner. To go very low, to very explain how does that affect your daily work. That was the overall idea, and that's why it's so broad. So if you say, okay, we have, for example, this one capability of extracting text or summarizing text, then to say, okay, what does it mean for the library? What does it mean for the committees? What does it mean for research services to break down texts? When are they breaking down texts in different settings? So that was the overall idea. That's why it's a very high number. But if you would say, okay, if we put it on a very abstract manner, then maybe it's not so much, so deep. Yeah. So that's maybe it was the intended idea, but maybe it sounds a bit okay, it's not so much, but rather just more calibrated for individual specific tasks. So that's why 180.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really very beneficial response for our audience as well. One of the things I've realized, especially over the last sort of 2 years or so, or year, in terms of AI usage and AI patterns as well, is that there isn't one model which will cater for every single use case within a parliament. It is very unique and very structured for each of those particular use cases. An example, there's no overriding magical silver bullet, you know, or golden bullet that can just solve all the parliamentary problems, you know, and data with one model. And the way which we've sort of definitely been looking at it, especially in the last sort of, you know, again, like 2 years, is very much like per business function. And I think like what you're saying is very valuable to the audience, is saying like, it isn't like something you can just upload all your parliamentary data into one model, have one chatbot or one virtual agent, and it will be successful. It's very much, I think, as you sort of said, that tailored approach to each of those sort of business areas. Why I think, you know, the 180 sounds large, but ideally they've all got different functions to serve within the parliamentary sense.
And you know why we did that? Because we recognize that people are, when they do not really understand what AI is, they just hear it from the media, and it makes, you know, because it's so much accelerating, it seems so far away. And that afraids people, I think. And you nearly every week you find a study that says, oh, so many people will be laid off because of AI. And that makes people very nervous about that, and makes them very conservative approach to AI. And the idea here is to make it more understanding that it's not a high level, let's say, soft piece of software where you just have an application and you have an interface and you need to point here and there and whatever. Rather, it is a kind of, like a kind of assistant where you really could speak with a natural language. So this is at least what we think is the main value, also concerning the potential that is now available through these technologies. So we try to lower the barrier and say, if we address AI, and because all of it, their risk and the failure that is coming with AI, so hallucination, bias, and so on and so forth, we do not put it in the very sensitive parts of the parliament. We don't try it out there first. We rather try to find use cases where you say, okay, if there is a mistake, it is not a catastrophe. And that's why we dig very deep to show here are activities, and it's not the activities only of the legislative work where it really makes a big impact, but rather it's really the normal day-to-day routines that could be supported by AI, and that saves you a bit time. But we are 3,500 people. I mean, a bit time, let's say 10, 15 minutes a day, that's accumulating again and again. This is where we think this is the approach where you need to take AI and to say, this will not kill your job because it's only 50 minutes. Yeah, and maybe in 1, 2, 3 years, it's not 50 minutes, it's 30 minutes or whatever. It doesn't replace you because it's not that high evolved. It's not making your expertise absent or put it away. Your expertise is still there because you need to guide AI in that sense. And this is important for us.
Yeah, that's a really in-depth response and amazing. I think it's really interesting. I was talking with another parliament this week, and we're talking with some of the staff members, and I'll give you an example of questions. So the concept of a question being asked to a minister or a member of parliament, etc. And also when you have some committees which, like we have some committees here in Australia where you could process 10,000 questions in a week. And one of the sort of realities of life was that they were the staff were saying, well, no, we have to come in on weekends. We have to, work overtime at night. We have to actually do this just to process each one individually, even though the content is relatively straightforward. And as you sort of said, I think it's the reality of using artificial intelligence as a tool to supplement your work, not replace your work, to supplement your work is actually really powerful when you're dealing with large amounts of content or even, as you said, 3,500 people. And I think that sort of whole, sometimes when we are working in Parliament, the expectation is that we work very long hours or, to meet a deadline for the members of Parliament so they can make a decision. And, 15 minutes of a day or 30 minutes of a day is very significant, I think, to the overall efficiency of how we can actually pass legislation. What are your sort of thoughts around that?
Yeah. So definitely true. So, but I was very surprised when talking with all the different, or with some of the different departments and what they're actually doing. When I say, okay, and I could do that, and that for you. So let's have a discussion about this. And where do you think AI is interesting? And they tell me, here, example number 1, example number 2, example number 3. I say, okay. But these are very important activities and routines. So if there's a mistake, that's not what AI is supposed to do now in a very correct manner up to now. Do you have maybe some routines where you say, oh, this is very boring, that takes a lot of time, and in the end, we always feel very frustrated. So if you start from the frustrating point, they come up with very different ideas. And these ideas are often the ones where you really say, okay, yeah, that's exactly what an IA can have the most impact to you. For example, there are so many protocols or memos to be made just for internal reasons. I was surprised, and this takes some people an hour per day just to summarize what someone they prepare certain speeches, and they say, oh, basically it's always the same structure, but we just need to add the new topics. And this is for the chairman, for example. But the structure is always the same, and he's reading out loud. And we have one people who's always just doing that once per day, an hour. And when you say, okay, yeah, but exactly this is what a large language will do quite good, yeah, just to make text out of different parts of smaller texts which are not connected, but an LLM could do this very well, and there's not a big issue with that. If you just say, okay, here are the pieces, please combine them in that structure. Here's the structure. Here's an example of the structure, and just learn that. And this really creates these aha moments, you know, where you say, okay, this is the cherry picking. So boring work where you don't think about the first time when you hear, hey, this is AI, because when the people think, hey, this is AI, they always think, oh, this is we need big processes, we need a lot of whatever. They have also these wish dreaming where you say, oh, I need someone who could do the magic for that, and you say, no, that's not how it's going. It's more for work where you say, okay, this is really time taking for me. Yeah, it's simple but time taking, and I think this is where you first jump in and say, okay, this is where we need to have also very good developed interfaces that people are not, you know, all doing their own prompting, and the ones who are very good at prompting have good results, and the others who do not have the knowledge or are not used to it have bad results. So I think with very good interfaces and with very good, let's say, a small app like an app store, you can leverage a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a again really good commentary on that as well. I think, you know, it's a really good point you raised, and this is actually raised, I think, last week by another parliament as well. The prompting, you know, is actually a fine art, and I know from my own usage of artificial intelligence, and you know, talking to GPT or Claude or a range of other things as well, has developed significantly. And when I first used it to where I use it now, because I'm trying to refine and get better results as an example. But if you look at, for example, you know, you've got 3,500 people in your organization, or even what we've actually just done recently is we have elections and we have new members coming into the parliament, and so they have a handbook, and that handbook might be, you know, 200 pages long with all the different rules, and here are your allowances, and here is a range of things. It's all self-contained within one like handbook and PDF document as an example. And to me, like, that was a really interesting use case to help new parliamentarians or new members of parliament to actually find relevant information really quickly around, well, what are my allowances for travel? What are, you know, and just using very simple text. And I think a very simple user interface, as you sort of described, which gives you guidance and which is giving you prompts to say, how do I interact with this data? Knowing, you know, this is the actual data which is available is really probably quite important, instead of this whole sort of philosophy around, here albeit just have one search bar as we traditionally do in like Google or Bing or whatnot, and just start typing and you'll get 20,000 results and you've got to work out which one's the best for you. And I think it's that sort of paradigm shift between what I call the prompt searching to that sort of, from the general searching to the prompt searching becomes really interesting and important. And even from a training point of view, like, what are your sort of thoughts around the training component within your own staff around artificial intelligence as well? Like, you have 3,500 people. That would be probably a large undertaking from a change management and a training perspective to work out how we use AI effectively as well.
Yeah. This is what I wanted to point when you mentioned the prompting as a fine art. I mean, there will always be people who are, let's say, very conservative and don't want to make any failures. And for these people, you also need to have a certain access point for AI technologies. You cannot just leave them away, or because sometimes these people use these, let's say, a free chatbot. They use them some kind of wrong because they ask them questions, but the chatbot is not connected to the internet. So then they have their training data, and they answer the question from their training data, which is maybe too old. And then they say, they ask questions and say, the AI gave me that and that response, but that is wrong because I know it, because I know the answer, and this is wrong. And you say, yeah, but it's like, if you use saw chain to model a dig in the hole, it works somehow, but it's not made for it. Yeah, so you need to use a tool as it is used to be. Or you need to adjust that. And so just the LMN itself is not a search engine, and people need to understand this, because they otherwise will have a bad experience. And if you have a bad experience from introduction of, it doesn't matter which kind of technology, but what kind of application. If they have a bad experience in the first time, it will be hard to convince them to go further. And that's why training is so important. We need really to make these people understand that this is not a typical application in that sense, which is always doing the same. We really need to make them understand how it works, why it works that way, and to convince them to find an access for their most useful use case, to enable them to solve their own use case. That must be the goal. That's why the first, let's say, training is more about how it works and what are the risks, what are the benefits. What's your role? What's the role of the AI here? And the next step, if we see that this is working, so if someone came up with an idea and say, hey, this is in my part a very huge leverage to use AI in that sense, maybe with this kind of prompt, and it's not a simple prompt, it's a very nearly a programming prompt where you say, if you do that and do that, and so on and so forth, and all these examples, then we could say, okay, maybe a lot of people have this problem, and we can build a new interface. For example, the example we mentioned before, summarized text. If you say, here's someone who has like a 200-page long study, and who wants to have a summary of a text. Of course, the AI will do summary, but it will be for sure not in the sense of the one who wants to have the summary, because you need to frame that. You need to explain what you want. Otherwise, they will do it as they think you want to do it. So you need to be more explicit. And if you say, okay, but we can also do something on the interface. We don't just have a chat window, but rather we have, for example, the range of a page. Where is it located? It's not 200 pages. It's page 10 to 15. There, this is where my information is. I don't need to run the whole AI through 200 pages, which is very, very costly, by the way. And it's nonsense. It doesn't make sense to do it. But you say, okay, I need it, and the summary, I need it in that way. And I need the summary here for this aspect, and I need the summary and that tone, and I need it for that and that work. Then, and you just click it. You don't need to type something. Then this really makes an even bigger impact and takes away the responsibility of being a good prompter. Yeah. So then you have more like a approach where you say, okay, this is predefined, and if you have some specifics, then you just need to adjust a bit your task prompt. But I think there's a lot of cherries or low-hanging fruits in the interface.
Yeah, I think I'd love to chat for hours and hours and hours. Like I think I've got so much to ask you, and like some of my experience as well. And I think the user interface. I think I just wanted to sort of close off on the user interface side, like. For example, and also some of the aspects around what you've said, like it's very contextual. So as you sort of said, like if you're looking at page 10 to 15, search across that data set as an example, or because as you said, like some people don't realize if they just put all their information into one model or algorithm or whatnot, it can get very expensive very quickly. When you're not focusing on the use case, as you sort of said, or the context which you're actually going, with as well. And I think during the transition between what I call traditional search and, the new way of sort of searching and asking questions about content, which is in context of what you're actually doing, for example, we're doing simple things like, oh, here's some quick questions, or here's some relevant questions which may be common across that use case. Like, can you please help summarize this, submission, or, what is my, what bills are being debated today? So again, very targeted queries to help them with their prompt engineering by default. So having those sort of targeted approaches, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah. I think it's also very important to lower the fears of using AI and to say, okay, just they can help you, but you need to understand them so they can understand what you want. And this is it's like, more using the dialogue option in such a model. For example, I got questioned, is it better to upload a file with the text or to put the file or the text inside directly? And I said, just ask the LLM. Yeah, because they know by themselves better. And these asking or being in a dialogue. So how should I better give me tips for a prompt to summarize this text? Yeah, just absolutely. to use the LLM itself, not in the activities they should perform, but rather in the introduction how it should perform. So going more into a dialogue option. I think this is also very good way. So it feels good to work with that, because it's not like these top down, but rather to help me, give me some information, help me to be better, to use you. This is I think very fresh approach. Sometimes there's really work that is boring, and people sometimes like to just to have someone who's also in the position, and maybe it feels good just to say, okay, can you give me tips about that? So I mean, you don't should take it for granted, this is all right, but I think the interactive part, that's very interesting.
No, definitely it is. And like it's effectively like we're relearning how to search.
Yeah.
You know, Google and Bing or Alta Vista and, you know, all these sort of other sort of search engines which are around for you know, now decades effectively, we're now having to relearn some of the, what I call our basics around searching and how we can now, I think, drive it to the next level is really a fascinating, you know, I suppose journey in terms of what we're all going through as well.
Yeah, especially an LLM doesn't get annoyed. So you just tell me, give me a proposal. No, I don't like it. Give me a second one. Do it more that way. You can do it like 20 times. It's never like, I don't have time anymore for you.
Yeah, that's right. So it's amazing. So no, I just wanted to say, sorry, Martin, did you have something else?
No, I was finished.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this discussion.